Stop podcast surfing. You're in the right place. I've always wanted to sing. Hi, everyone. I am your host, Kimbralon B. I'm a licensed counselor, but I'm not your counselor. And I'm also the host of Good Tea and Reads. So I created Good Tea and Reads so we could use everyday topics, issues, and current events to explain the importance of mental health awareness. Most mental health discussions are so important because so many people suffer in silence or do not realize that they're dealing with mental health issues because of stigma, society, and family expectations, and other reasons. Some episodes on Good Tea and Reads are heavy and will make us think. Other episodes will be very enlightening or refreshing. But either way, you will have an awesome experience. Here's the disclaimer. Any information shared on Good Tea and Reads is not a substitute for seeking professional care from another professional. Any information shared on Good Tea and Reads is not meant to diagnose the subjects or persons discussed on this podcast. Also, any information shared on this show is for conversational, inspirational, and educational purposes as well. So, all right, this intro is long enough. All right, so go grab your cups really quick. Go, 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 go. So I can pour this piping hot tea. Meet me inside on this episode in 1, 2, 3. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Good Tea and Reads. I am your hostess with the mostest, Kimbralon B. Everyone, how have you been? I hope that you've been okay. I hope that you've been taking care of yourself as we have talked about on other shows and that you're taking care of your bodies. The weather is looking very nice around here. We're able to get out and just enjoy the weather. I actually stay in Arizona, and one of the payoffs we have one of the hottest summers. We are definitely in the valley in Phoenix, and it is super hot, but this time of the year is what we wait for, and we're just enjoying this nice weather. All right, so a little bit about me. I am a licensed counselor, but I'm not your counselor. And I like to say that because any information that we give on this show is for conversational and educational purposes, and it does not substitute you seeking a higher level of care. Me nor my guests know your specific situations, and we're just sharing valuable information. We are expecting you to go to someone in your community and team up with them so they can learn about you, what works for you, any diagnosis that you may have, so they're able to create a treatment plan that works for you. All right. And the reason I've actually created this show is because I have a passion for talking about mental health, and mental health is present in all activities of our lives. And I found out that people normally don't reach me in the counseling rooms due to stigmas, financial situations, they're unsure of where to go. So I've decided to take my show on the road, and I love to talk about mental health. And sometimes I do it by myself, but then there's other times where I don't know it all. And I like to team up with some pretty amazing people to help me talk about subjects that I may not know a lot about. And so that's what you're seeing today. So today, everyone, I am so excited to have Dr. Hevi joining us today. And what I want to do, I want to give a brief introduction about how I met Dr. Hevi, and then I'll let Dr. Hevi give his own introduction. So I was actually at an event that Dr. Heavy was presenting at, and he actually shared his story about like what he does career wise. He shared his personal experience. What caught me with the story that was shared, one of the other individuals that was actually at the event talked about how Dr. Heavy came to support her even outside of the medical room when she was in a dark place. And when she shared that, I was like, wow, that was amazing for me to hear, because usually doctors get a bad rap like, oh, they don't have bedside manners, or they don't care, they don't have time to listen. But when she shared that story, that really spoke to me. And I was like, I'm going to take my chance to see if he'll come on Good Tea and Reads to talk about a subject. And he said yes. So I'm really excited to have Dr. Heavy here. And it's probably on one of his off days, which I'm like, thank you for doing this. If this is a day that you could be relaxing, but you're giving time to actually team up with me to educate the community. I'm very excited about that. So without further ado, Dr. Heavy, would you please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners?
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be here. And education is one of my biggest passions. Right? I love to teach people about the topic of weight gain, obesity, and all of the things that go along with it, because there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of conflicting information as well. And so I found that people get confused, which is only natural, right? Because if you have two reputable healthcare professionals or even experts in the field who are telling you two totally different things, it's really, really hard to know exactly which one applies to you. And that's the key also, right? Because we're all different. And so different things may apply to different people. And so it may not necessarily be that one of those providers you're listening to is wrong. It just may be that what that person is talking about applies to a different subset of people than you yourself. But as Kimbra said, my name is Delali, last name Hevi, Dr. Hevi. I am double board certified in internal medicine and obesity medicine. But apart from that, I have had a lot of experience and a lot of self-teaching when it comes to natural remedies, naturopathy, and holistic medicine. So I kind of have the best of both worlds in that I trained as a conventional MD. And so if there's a prescription or a procedure that needs to be done, I can provide that. But if there's also a more natural or holistic way to approach a certain issue, I can provide guidance in that area as well. And I have a practice here in Sun City, West Arizona, and I combine primary care as well as weight management in the practice. And pretty much it's 100% weight management, because even my pure primary care patients always get a lecture or a talk or questions pertaining to their weight. Even if they're normal weight, we try and prevent them from gaining weight in the future. And so that's me in a nutshell.
All right, perfect. And thank you for coming on Good Tea and Reads. So today's topic, Dr. Heavy and everyone else that's listening, I like to tie it into tea because we're Good Tea and Reads. So the topic name is weighing in on obesity and
That's
mental
awesome.
health. So I have the mental health piece, but I didn't know that much about obesity. So we're going to get started, but I just wanted to share some of the statistics to provide insight into the reasons we're talking about the topic today. So the statistics I'm about to share They're from the World Health Organization. 22. 1 in 8 people in the world were living with obesity. The second fact is worldwide adult obesity has more than doubled since 1990, and adolescent obesity has quadrupled. In 2022, 33% of adults ages 18 and over were overweight, and 16% were living with obesity. And lastly, in 2024, 35 million children under the age of 5 were overweight. And there was actually more statistics to just support this. Dr. Heavy, I want us to go ahead and get started with our conversation, but just to set the stage, because I know everybody can have different definitions of obesity. So, what is your definition of obesity?
All right. So, yes, you are perfectly right. There are so many ways of looking at obesity. There are so many definitions out there. Probably the most pervasive and the most popular is the body mass index, right? But it is not the most ideal because it really doesn't look at the burden of fat and the impact of the fat on the individual. It just says that above a certain BMI, it takes into consideration the weight and the height of the individual. So it's the weight of the person in kilograms divided by the height squared in meters. Okay. And it can be used, it's good to use on a population level when you're looking at large numbers of people. But when it comes to individuals, I like to use the example of, let's say, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? When he was in his prime, he was just with this solid lump of muscles, right?
Yes.
And based on a BMI, he would have been classified as being morbidly obese. But yes, but it was all solid muscle, healthy muscle. He was a healthy guy. And so for someone like that, the BMI is a totally useless indicator. So I tend to go more with the definition that is brought forward by the Obesity Medicine Association, which is an organization of hundreds, I think now thousands of professionals, healthcare professionals from around the world in the obesity space. And their definition is kind of long and long-winded, but to summarize it, what it says is obesity is any condition or situation in which someone has excess fat on their body and that fat is impacting their health in one way or another. And so that takes away, that really blows apart the conventional thought process, right? Because you can have someone who is very large, has a lot of excess fat on them, but that fat is not metabolically active and not impacting their health in any way. And so, strictly speaking, you can't really label that person as obese based on that definition. But on the flip side, which I think is even more important, is you could have someone who is conventionally thought of as slim, but maybe has a tiny bit of belly fat that is metabolically active. And that's producing chemicals that are causing inflammation, which is driving diseases like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, all sorts of other things. And so that person, when you see that person, you wouldn't think that person as obese, but metabolically and health-wise, the person actually is. And so that is the definition that I like to go with because that portends for better health outcomes for everyone in the end.
Wow, that is so amazing. You actually answered because so many people are like, when somebody unfortunately passes away and they appear to be in shape, how society see it. They're like, oh, they were slim, they ran all the time. But
Mhm.
your definition explains how that could possibly happen. I think we focus on appearance and we're like, oh no, wow, okay. So, can you share your personal and professional journey that led you to specialize in weight management?
All right. Okay. So, well, I guess we'll have to start from the very beginning. So, so I was born in Ghana, West Africa. And at the age of 6, so my mom came to the US to do a study for her doctorate degree in Iowa State University. And so I came along with her. Now, back in Ghana, I was a skinny kid for those first 6 years of my life. I was like the number one. But as soon as we came over to the US, I started expanding. And in a few short months, I actually had become an obese child. And that's one of the things too, I tell this story because one of the thought processes is that obesity is a purely, genetic factor. And so there's nothing anyone can do about it. If you have the gene for obesity, then you're going to be obese regardless. But that's not true. I mean, my story is a testament to that because I didn't undergo a gene mutation by flying over the Atlantic Ocean, right? It was the exact same genes in me. The difference was the environment that I was in, right? I went from one environment which probably, I would say, my over years and years and generations of people, my ancestors lived in a certain environment and were used to a certain way of eating, a certain lifestyle, but coming to a totally different environment, different foods, different chemicals, different environmental stuff that didn't interact appropriately with what I was used to. And therefore that resulted in me gaining weight. Now, because of my obesity, I I was subjected to what a lot of people with excess weight get subjected to, which is, taunting, teasing, bullying. And so that stirred up a passion in me to kind of discover or learn more about what causes obesity so that I could tackle it. And when my mom finished her studies, we went back to Ghana. But through high school and college, I continued to struggle with my weight. I fluctuated, yo-yoed like crazy. Eventually, getting into medical school, I put more time into learning about obesity. And so, because of my extra knowledge, friends came to me for advice and they started to get good results. And so then their friends started coming and their family started coming, and it just kind of blossomed from that. And so when I came back to the US, I always incorporated discussions about weight with my interactions with patients. And thankfully, in 2012, I became board certified in obesity medicine as well, and so made it more formal. And I guess the rest is history.
That's nice. So you had your personal experience. I remember when you had shared that, I was like, wow. Yeah, I was amazed when you had shared your story as well and how you took that to provide the service to others. I'm so glad that you agreed to come on Good Tea and Reads to talk about obesity and weight management. Obesity has such a negative stigma attached to it, how it's portrayed in the media, the stereotypes, and unfortunately, weight discrimination. It happens everywhere. I even remember when I was in school, there was like, which I'm at a mature age, Dr. Heavy. So that was years ago where weight mattered. Like if you were over a certain amount, you couldn't try out for cheerleader, you couldn't try out for anything, and there were girls that was literally starving themselves to get back into this weight so they could try out for cheerleading. With that, society has been presented with the idea that eating too much is the only factor that contributes to obesity. Can you please elaborate on how negative stigmas surrounding obesity impact individuals?
All right, that's an excellent question, and probably one of the most important ones to be answered because I want your listeners to gain even just one thing from listening to this podcast today. That one thing should be the fact that weight gain and obesity has virtually nothing to do with willpower. That's probably the most pervasive bias, the most pervasive misinformation that's out there when it comes to the causes of obesity. It has to do more with human physiology than willpower. And when your physiology is telling you that you have to do something, willpower goes out of the window. I mean, you could be the strongest person, but if your brain is telling you, hey, we have to do this, we have to eat this in order to survive because it's thinking that you are going to die without it, there's nothing you can do. And so, yeah, so the biggest misinformation out there, as I said, is that obesity is an issue of an inability to manage the number of calories you're putting into your mouth and a laziness when it comes to physical activity. But what I want people to understand is for the majority of people, there are dozens, actually, in many cases, hundreds of biochemical and physiologic processes going on that are driving a slowdown in your metabolism and an increase in appetite, which is beyond the control of the individual. And there are so many different things. I mean, we could go on and on. Food plays a role, definitely. Sometimes it's the additives, preservatives, chemicals in the food uh, can uh, can drive obesity and push us into fat storing mode. But then there are things like mood, which is the topic of today. Mental health. It's not always in the sense that we think of it, right? The It is a well-known fact that like people who are under stress is probably the biggest factor. People who are maybe depressed or anxious have the tendency towards weight gain and a tendency towards reaching out for comfort foods. But once again, that goes back to physiology because what happens is the reason why people who are stressed or anxious or depressed reach out for snacks and comfort foods, which are usually high carbohydrate foods, is that number one, it gives those types of foods, especially sugar and glucose, gives a temporary high, a temporary hit or a feel good feeling. And that has to do with dopamine. That's way beyond the scope of this discussion, but just keep that in mind. And when you get that hit of dopamine, the body loves that and wants more. When that sensation goes down, the brain wants more of it. And so it drives you to seek out the thing that gave you that pleasurable sensation or that relief from your stress or anxiety. And that sets in place repeated behavior. The other thing that happens when you get a big glucose spike is your body naturally produces insulin. And insulin is the hormone that regulates our blood sugar, right? And it does that when the body senses your blood sugar goes up, it produces insulin to bring it back down again. And it does that by pushing the sugar or the glucose into your cells. So some of it goes into your muscle cells and into your organs and is used, for normal functions. If there's any excess left over, the body stores that glucose as fat. Okay. Now, when you have insulin being produced, insulin also causes amino acids. Amino acids are the basic building blocks for protein in the body. And there are many different amino acids that are out there. And the body puts them together in different proportions, different ratios in order to build different tissues. So there is a certain set of amino acids that the body can put together to build muscle tissue, for example. Another set that it may put together to build the lining of your gut. Another set that it puts together to make hormones or peptides or enzymes, stuff like that. And there's a particular amino acid called tryptophan that's closely related to mood because the body uses tryptophan to make serotonin. And serotonin is one of the feel-good hormones in the body, right? That's what helps with stress, anxiety, even depression sometimes. And it's actually the basis of most of the medications that are out there right now for managing depression and anxiety. They work by trying to boost the serotonin levels in the body, but the body can naturally make it. Now, what happens is when you have a lot of those amino acids in the bloodstream, they compete for access to the brain. But whenever there's insulin in the bloodstream, the insulin will actually make the majority of the other amino acids go into your muscle. And that leaves tryptophan on its own circulating in the bloodstream. And so because there's no other competition, the tryptophan more easily gets into your brain, gets converted into serotonin, which gives you that feel-good feeling. And that's the reason eating high sugar, high carbohydrate foods can also give you a boost of a feel good chemical. Okay. But then there's that crash that comes afterwards, right? And so your serotonin levels go down and the brain craves more. And so that further drives that desire to seek out those foods. And when you repeatedly eat foods high in carbohydrate and sugar, you develop a condition called insulin resistance as the body stops responding to insulin. And that's where things really start to snowball downwards because then your body gets sort of locked in fat storing mode. Your energy starts to tank because all your energy is being diverted into fat. You could eat something and it just gets diverted into fat. So your bloodstream, your brain senses, oh my God, we just ate, but we're still starving. We need more calories. So you go and eat. And that new boost or new set of calories still gets diverted into your fat. And then you need more. And that just sets up this vicious cycle that progresses into other diseases as well. And so those are some of the big mechanisms through which people, the physiology can drive weight gain and drive mental instability and imbalances that just sets up a vicious cycle. Some of the other things I'll mention just briefly, I mean, there are certain medications that can increase appetite or cause insulin resistance. There are people with allergies, chronic allergies that can also drive that. I have patients who come and they notice that allergy season, they always gain weight. And then when it's out of allergy season, the weight goes back down again. And when we really tease that out, because when you have allergies, that your immune system is activated, that's a stress on the body. Body produces cortisol. Cortisol causes insulin resistance and fat storage. It's just fascinating the way the human body functions. And there are just so many other processes.
Wow. I can relate. I mean, that was so much because I was like, yes, I'm used to these feelings. And you definitely do have that crash. And next thing you know, I'm like, I'm ready to eat again. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
So my next thing I would like to share. So there was a time, Dr. Heavy, that I was actually studying to become a bariatric counselor because some
Wow.
of my clients that I was providing counseling to, it was after they had weight loss surgery. And they would come to me and they was presenting with depression. And I was like, wow. And I had, I think, 2 out of the 3 say, if I had known I was going to feel this way, I never would have done the surgery. And they regretted during the surgery. And I was like, wow. So that prompted me to study. I was like, well, I would like to be here and actually understand this and being able to support. But I started, but I didn't finish because it was during the pandemic, and then I went back into, like, full-time work, and I procrastinated a little bit too, if I just have to be honest. But I had noticed then that even when I was studying the books that there is a connection, as you was mentioning earlier, between obesity and mental health, that I would like to discuss. And obesity and mental health, I learned goes hand in hand. And like conditions, just like you shared earlier, like depression, anxiety, and trauma can increase that obesity risk. While obesity worsens mental health from factors like inflammation, unhealthy coping habits, probably eating or drinking or drug use, and social determinant of health factors like unemployment, unhealthy food, relationship changes, just like you mentioned, psych medications with side effects can also contribute to weight gain. So, my question to you is, why is it important for a provider to treat both obesity and mental health at the same time?
All right. Yeah. So it is crucial for that to be done because just as you mentioned, they go hand in hand, right? You cannot really treat one without treating the other. If you focus just on one of them, you will do incomplete management and the person will just end up back at square one, right? And it goes both ways. It's almost as if they are two sides of the same coin, right? Because mental health issues can result in obesity, and obesity can result in the mental health issues right? Because of, as you mentioned, the stigma, the bias that's out there. And the unfortunate truth is that this bias is present even amongst healthcare workers, right? The place where patients feel that they should be in a safe space, they should be understood and receive some compassion is actually the place where some of them experience the most bias. There are studies out there, unfortunately, that show that up to, in some cases, 60% of healthcare professionals have some form of bias towards people who are overweight or obese. And that really further drives the disease because some people, because of past negative experiences in the healthcare um, arena, just are not interested in seeing a healthcare professional anymore. And so they just suffer with whatever disease they have because they are, number one, scared or intimidated or stressed out anytime they have to go and see a healthcare professional. Now, so that's one area and one aspect of it. The other way, the other direction is, and then there are different layers of this, right? There's the first layer, what we talked about the um, uh, common mental health issues driving comfort-seeking behavior and eating and all that. Another layer, another level has to do with past trauma. Okay, and past trauma, which is buried deep in our brains, in our subconscious, and therefore we're really not aware of it, but it drives our behavior. Right? I've had a lot of patients, I mean, more than I wished I had, whose weight issues were driven by abuse in their childhood.
Mhm.
And the most common one is sexual abuse. And so what happens is in their adulthood, their body kind of sees the fact that they are overweight as a protective mechanism because they perceive that that is not very attractive and therefore they are not getting attention from people of the opposite sex. And then what happens is if they do try to lose the weight and they start getting compliments, that triggers those deeply buried sentiments and they start to sabotage themselves because they do not want that tension, and then they end up back where they started from without even realize how they got there. But it's all because of those deeply entrenched um, thought processes and traumas that are trying to, and the body, the brain is trying to protect the individual. The individual doesn't know that, you know. The brain doesn't know you're trying to fit into a bikini in the summer, right? Yeah. But that, yeah, that is an area that a lot of people are not aware of, but that is much more common than people know, and that surprises me how common that is. And that also is a good segue into another layer, which kind of goes hand in hand in that, but that's the power of the subconscious mind. Okay. And so we have basically two main levels of our minds or our brain function. There's the conscious level and the subconscious level, right? So the conscious level is everything that we are aware of. You know, I'm talking, I'm aware of the things I'm saying. If I wanted to move my hand or grab something, it's a conscious thought, something I think about. Now, the subconscious level are all the processes going on that we are not aware of. And that actually represents, it's believed, about 95% of our mental process. And so these are things like, you know, no, you don't have to think about it for your heart to beat, right? It's this your subconscious mind that regulates and makes your heart beat. You don't have to think for your lungs to breathe. So a lot of the chemical reactions and the processes in the body take place at the subconscious level. Okay. And so if your subconscious brain is programmed with the fact that, okay, this particular weight, I'm just throwing a number out there. Let's say 250 pounds is our ideal weight, is the healthiest weight for us. It will move heaven and earth to make sure you stay at that weight, no matter what you do. And no matter how hard you exercise, or no matter how much you deprive yourself of food, you will eventually find yourself back at or around that level. And I like to use the analogy of the autopilot in an airplane, right? Imagine you are the pilot, you're flying in a plane and you engage the autopilot. So let's say, well, we're in Arizona. Let's say you want to go to Las Vegas, okay, for
Mhm.
example, right? And so Nevada is north of Arizona. So let's say you put the autopilot on north, okay? So the plane will continue flying north regardless of what your desire is. If you change your mind and decide, oh, no, I think I want to go to Los Angeles, California, which is west of us, then you would have to disengage the autopilot in order to change direction. If you don't do that, the plane is going to keep going north. Now, you can override the autopilot by grabbing the controls and, you know, forcing the plane to go west. But as soon as your mind goes off of that and you take your hands off of the controls, the plane is going to autocorrect and start going north again.
Mhm.
And it's the same with the subconscious mind. Like I said, if it feels that this particular weight is right for you, no matter what you do, you can override that system for a while by exercising the heck out of yourself and trying to diet, but you are eventually going to get back up there. So the key is to identify the factors and the processes that have put your set weight at that particular level, and then changing those factors so that your new set weight is at where you desire it to be. And then it becomes effortless. I mentioned I struggled with my weight for years and years, decades actually. But right now, because I've been able to identify all the factors that were contributing to my weight gain and tackled them, right now it's effortless. And it's crazy sometimes. Sometimes I pinch myself. I mean, how is it possible? Because and it's crazy. Like even sometimes, like if we go on vacation and maybe I indulge a little and gain a little weight, when we come back home, I actually find myself like craving healthy foods, craving broccoli and lettuce and and I have no desire to eat any of the junk. And that's just my subconscious trying to get me back down to where
Mhm.
it feels. Yes, it's amazing. And so those are some of the biggest areas where the mind can be a very powerful tool.
Yes, definitely. Wow. You're piquing my interest into pursuing the bariatric counseling again.
It's fascinating. It is.
It really is. It definitely was. Yeah, I'm like, maybe I should go back and revisit.
Yeah.
So my next question, or speaking of biases, is weight-based discrimination is linked to poor mental health, regardless of a person's actual weight. And studies show that individuals who experience weight bias report significantly higher stress, up to 3 times more, highlighting the independent impact of stigma on emotional well being. Can you please share some of the weight biases your patient reports before and possibly after their weight management journey?
All right. Yeah. So, well, so patients, I would say probably the biggest weight bias that patients talk about or complain about has to do once again with this notion that having excess weight is a factor of willpower. And people who don't have weight issues tend to look on people who have weight issues as being lazy, for instance, or unintelligent, or just lacking willpower to stop eating and all of that. And that really affects people because it affects interactions with friends. People very often feel that they are being judged. They may feel stressed out when they are out and about with other people. They may feel judged when they attempt to exercise. Let's say they go to the gym, and it may not even be real, but it may be perceived, but they just think that there are eyes on them because they're overweight. And so that affects their desire and their drive to actually seek out the help that they need or the processes that they need to undertake in order to lose the weight. And I mentioned earlier that some of the biggest areas where this happens is actually in the healthcare setting. I had so many patients who told me that their regular providers sort of like looked down on them. And a lot of times it's not even at the conscious level. A lot of healthcare providers have subconscious or unconscious biases that show up just by even posture or tone of voice when the patient is in there with them, or the desire to do further testing or pursue testing to diagnose certain conditions. And this is very well documented in the literature, right? That a lot of times people who have excess weight, that their providers think everything they complain about is because of the excess weight. And therefore, they just tell them, oh, yeah, no, that's symptom. Oh, it's because you're overweight. Just push away from the table. I
Mhm.
just, all you need to do is eat less and exercise more. And yeah, that's going to take care of that. And so that really discourages them, once again, from seeking out medical care. And it's also very well documented that, you know, for example, I had a patient who came to me after getting frustrated with their other provider because they had it was vague, unspecific abdominal discomfort and abdominal pain. And it just persisted for months and months. And the person kept going back to the provider. The provider kept telling them, oh, it's, all the excess fat that you're carrying around. So just work harder on losing the weight. But when that individual eventually came here, we did some further testing to look into it and did some scans. It turned out that she had colon cancer. That was, yes. So that was crazy. Thankfully, it was caught early in time and, was managed, and the result was positive in that scenario. But that just goes to tell you some of the things that happen and some of the things that my patients tell me about when it comes to that stigma or the perceived bias that they undergo anytime they go into a healthcare setting. And it can be very subtle, things like not having the right size of blood pressure cuff,
Mhm.
right? That's something that, you wouldn't think, but is a huge source of trauma to a lot of patients. If they go to a medical office and they don't have a blood pressure cuff that fits them, a lot of them will tell me, I never went back there because I felt so ashamed when that happened, or it could be out in the waiting rooms. There are some offices that don't have big boy chairs, is what they nickname it, right? And so there may not be seats that can accommodate someone who has excess weight. And I've had patients who told me, like, they went to a doctor's office, couldn't find a place to sit, so they just left without being seen. Right. And so those are some of the things that people tell me about their experiences.
Jeez. Wow, that's very insightful. I know what I like about you and the Zenith Health Institute, because I went to the website, is the fact that you deliver. And on your website, it says this: customized healthcare and weight management solutions using a functional approach to heal and preserve your mind, body, and spirit, which addresses obesity and or weight management, mental health, and other areas of a patient journey. So can you share a little of what people will experience coming to see you?
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So we tend to take, yes, a very unique approach to the patient because everyone is different. And I mean, you could point to 10 different patients of mine, and each one would be on a completely different type of plan. Because what we try to do is we try to tease out and identify all of the different processes that are going on in the individual patients, and then tackle all of those, because that's really the only way you can ensure sustainable weight loss and sustainable health. And I'm blessed with all of my years of experience. I've been in this space for over 25 years now. thousands of patients from all walks of life. I mean, all demographics, different races, different ethnicities, the different economic brackets, different everything, different food desires and preferences. And so, I mean, I have patients who are vegans, patients who are vegetarians, paleo, ketogenic, carnivore, the whole spectrum. And they are thriving on all of those. The key is to be able to identify which of those works best for that individual. So that's the key thing. What else? Well, yes, and because we also have the approach of looking into mental health, I and our staff here have training into the basics. I mean, we're not specialists or psychiatrists or anything, but we know the basics of the impact of mental health on weight and vice versa. But we also know where to refer to if there's a situation or scenario that is higher than or beyond our control or higher levels. Because some people, will need formal psychiatric evaluation or help. Very often, even things like hypnosis. That's an area that I find very fascinating and can be so powerful. I mean, it blows me away. Some of the results that we get because hypnosis goes straight to that subconscious level of the mind, and they are able, if the person is amenable to hypnosis, then they are able to get to the root source and change it almost immediately. It's amazing. But yes, we have resources and the ability to refer out whenever it's necessary. I think yeah, those are some of the factors that really distinguish us and really drive the success that our patients achieve in our programs.
That's definitely amazing, especially it's that approach, like you said, it's functional. It's what works for the patient instead of here's your plan, this is what you need to do. We got to figure out what works for you. So yeah, that does make a difference. And it makes that person feel on board, a part of the team,
Right.
and able
Mm.
to just navigate that journey and be successful with navigating it. That's
Yes.
awesome. Can you tell us a little about your business, how to book appointments, and do you do virtual services just in Arizona or outside of Arizona, and any website information you would like to share?
Okay. Yeah, so we do virtual, but it's mainly just in Arizona because of licensing issues. I'm
Yeah.
licensed in Arizona, and so I'm not really allowed to practice outside because of the availability of video conferencing and video medical visits. We do have quite a number of patients who live out of state, but so long as they come in for that first visit in person, subsequent visits can be done virtually, but they do have to come at least once a year. So some people will make it a vacation, right? So, visit the Grand Canyon, and then while you're at it, oh, let's go see Dr. Hevi,
It's a win-win.
right? But we are working on, and probably the beginning of the year, we're working on a program or a system where we can provide some coaching. Yeah, so coaching is totally different. That one really is not bound by state boundaries. And so that can even apply and benefit people worldwide. And so that should be coming out soon. But the website is it's just the full name of the business. So www.zenithhealthinstitute.com. Um, yeah, Yes.
Check it out, everyone. You got to go to the website and check it out. It's really informative. So, I know you mentioned the coaching services. That's pretty nice to be able to reach people. But I know that some of the viewers and listeners may be outside of Arizona. Is there a website or resources that they could use to get them connected with someone in their community if they're wanting to begin their weight management journey?
Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Obesity Medicine Association, and there are a lot of providers, across the country who also have the expertise or the certification in obesity medicine. And so if you go to their websites or the Obesity Medicine Association website, I believe there's a provider location tool over there that you can plug in your zip code, and then they can let you know if there are any providers within that specialty in your locality. So that would probably be the best way to look. Like you can also refine your search, because like I said, I don't just do the traditional medical stuff. I also incorporate a lot of holistic practices and naturopathy in it. And so see if you can find someone who also has the designation of like a functional medicine provider. So that's the keyword, functional medicine, because then you are able to also get a more encompassing evaluation and management of the condition.
Perfect. Or bring go on vacation, bring the family to Arizona. The weather is perfect now.
Right, that's true. Yeah, it's
Grand
wonderful.
Canyon, Sedona, see Dr. Heavy. That's your list. You could
But yeah,
do that
we
as
do have
well.
patients. Yeah, we do have patients who fly in from the East Coast. I mean, New York, New Jersey, Florida, once a year, just to
See,
come see us. Yeah.
see, not a bad idea. So go ahead and get those tickets. Maybe after the holidays, the tickets may be a little expensive, but still, the weather will still be nice. And if it's not nice,
Right.
come anyway. There's places you can go to cool off here. Well, awesome, Dr. Heavy. This has been so informative. I'm like, this hour or this time went by so fast, but I've learned so much. This is so helpful. I
I'm
guess
glad.
before we end, did you have anything that you would like to share? Anything else?
Well, I think the encompassing thing that was shared, or the bottom line of our whole discussion, is that if you have excess weight and have some mental health challenges or feel stressed out because of that, do not despair. There are resources out there. There are people out there who understand your situation, understand what you're going through, and who are empathic to that, and can help you and walk you through it. And also, you know, get that, try and get that entrenched and ingrained in your mind, that it's not an issue of willpower. It's not because you are weak. Okay. And I have patients who are struggling with weight, but who are some of the most strongly willed people I've seen in my whole life. There are people who are dedicated to trying to lose the weight, but it's just not coming off because they are coming up against their own physiology. Like I said, that's virtually impossible to do. So don't be frustrated. Try and see if you can identify some of the triggers or some of the things that are causing you to lose the weight. And next time you go to your doctor's office, ask for, when your annual physical, ask if your doctor can add on a fasting insulin level. That's a very important number, okay? Because when your fasting insulin is elevated, that is an indication that you have insulin resistance, which is very, very common nowadays. In fact, the latest statistics that I saw showed that about 92%, it's crazy, 92% of Americans are metabolically inflexible or metabolically unstable or have some degree of, yes, metabolic derangement, or which translates into insulin resistance. And that is probably the biggest driver of weight gain, of the mental and mood instability that can progress into weight gain, biggest driver of diabetes, hypertension, strokes, heart disease, cancer, dementia. Is crazy. But you won't know because the conventional tests that are run during a regular annual just looks at blood sugar, looks at the hemoglobin A1C. But many people have insulin resistance for years and years before their blood sugar actually starts to go up. And so ask for that test, and that can start the conversation or even your own journey towards improvement or prevention of those conditions that we mentioned.
Wow, thank you. That's even more helpful. So everyone, do that, and that can definitely help you on your journey. Well, Dr. Heavy, this has been great. This information has been helpful. I know for a fact everyone's teacups was filled with this information. Herbal tea, good tea. We have the doctor on the show, everyone. Have good tea, good
Yes,
healthy tea.
hopefully not too much sugar in there.
Hope hopefully not too much sugar in your tea. so, so we hope that this information has helped you and helped you start your journey. If you were thinking about your journey, or if you were on your journey and wondering why I'm having these type of feelings, but always feel free, take this information, go talk to your providers, who are your team of people, because again, your situation may be different, or it may be some things that we don't know about that your providers know about, so they'll be able to come up with the best plan for you. This is another great episode in the books. We appreciate you again, Dr. Heavy, for coming on Good Tea and Reads. And everyone, until next time, this is Kimbralon B signing off. Take care.